My name is Chris Boyce. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Georgia's Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources. I studied at the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory under Dr. James Beasley. Today I'm presenting research involving the timing and extent of crop damage caused by wild pigs to corn and peanut fields in South Carolina. Having one of the most extensive geographic ranges of any large mammal, wild pigs, also known as wild boar in their native range, are a species of global concern. Many areas have seen a rise in pig populations and range, and that has introduced more agencies and more landowners to the environmental and economic threat that is posed by this species. And that is certainly true in the United States. In the past few decades, the number of states reporting wild pigs has increased from 17 to more than 40. A complete picture of the agricultural toll of wild pig damage is difficult to obtain, but a 2016 landowner survey by Anderson estimated the combined value of corn and peanut damage caused by wild pigs to be $101 million annually in 11 Southeast states. This number is assuredly low, as peanuts were not included for Georgia or South Carolina, which are two important producers. Right now, there are few published studies that track the occurrence and extent of this damage across the whole growing season for corn, and none that we were aware of for peanuts. While landscape feature prediction has been used in Europe and Asia for corn and other crops, we were unable to find similar research in the United States, and again, nowhere for peanuts. As mentioned, we want to establish when and where wild pig damage occurs throughout the growing season, and determine if we can use landscape models to predict the presence and severity of that damage. We hypothesized that damage will coincide with caloric density and peak at planting, and then again before harvest. We also expected to link the presence and severity of damage to preferred wild pig habitat surrounding our surveyed fields. This is a map of our study area with the counties we surveyed in highlighted in color. In 2017, we were in Calhoun and Aiken counties, and in 2018, we also expanded into Hampton, Bamberg, and Colleton counties. We used walked transect surveys to measure damage to the fields. To keep a consistent metric, we counted any damage to an individual plant as a whole. So half an ear of corn browsed by a deer was counted the same as a seedling rooted at emergence. Damage from all identifiable sources was counted, and plants were marked unknown if we were unable to determine the source. The only damage we did not count was caused by people. Over the course of both growing seasons, we surveyed 30 corn and 42 peanut fields with a total area of 1,416 hectares. We divided the growing season into 1-month intervals to capture damage from planting to harvest. For corn, this was 4 surveys. Emergence, about 10 days after seeds had gone into the ground to allow the pigs to find the fields that had been planted. The V4, V6 stage, where the energy provided by the seed has expired and the plant has switched over to photosynthesis. The silk stage, where pollination occurs and ears develop. And the mature stage, when the ears have reached their maximum dry weight. For peanuts, because of the longer growing season, we performed 5 surveys. Again, emergence the same as corn. The R1 stage, where flowering occurs, the R2, R3 stage, where pegs and pods develop, the R5 stage, where seeds develop, and the 5th survey took place when the mature peanuts had been mechanically turned to dry in the sun. Every field had 2 edge transects between 3 and 12 meters from the field edge. These corresponded to the most heavily wooded sides of the field. Depending on the size of the field, 0 to 4 interior transects were also added. Transects were permanent throughout the growing season and contained 3 rows on either side of the observer. This was to set the maximum observable amount of damage somewhat equal as plants grew taller and visibility was diminished. With ArcMap, we were able to determine field areas, and with the National Land Cover Database and state quadrat layers, we were able to determine the distance to the nearest water source, the percentage of paved road that ran along the perimeter of the fields, and the amount of adjacent forested, wetland, and agricultural land contained in a 1-kilometer buffer around each field. In addition to landscape attributes, twice during each growing season, we performed 10-day camera surveys on approximately half of our study fields. We placed 1 to 3 cameras per field, depending on area. Cameras were placed along farm roads and game trails and baited with corn, and the resulting images were used to determine the number of individuals present at each field. We detected pig damage at 17 of our 30 corn fields and 14 of our 42 peanut fields. Fields that had pig damage ranged from 7 to nearly 7,000 damaged plants in those transects. In this graph, the red color indicates the amount of wild pig damage. So 63% of wild pig damage occurred in the emergence stage for corn, and damage then fell to nearly 0 in the V4, V6 stage. It resumed again during the silk and mature stages, although to a lesser extent. We also saw small mammals as the second most damaging source, followed by water. The most heavily damaged stage for peanuts is emergence once again. Damage fell off similarly to corn, but unlike corn, did not resume in the later stages. Over 97% of all wild pig damage we measured occurred within 2 weeks of planting. Water was also a significant source of damage, followed by deer. We performed binomial regression models to determine if landscape and camera data could predict whether damage would occur, and negative binomial regressions for the prediction of the extent of that damage. For the presence of damage to cornfields, we had 2 supported models run out of the 32 run. The first is a positive association with the adjacent wetland amount and a negative association with the amount of adjacent agriculture and paved roads. The second model is the same as the first, with the additional positive association between wild pig damage and forested area. Together, these models have a combined weight of roughly 70%. For predicting the extent of damage to corn, only one model was supported, a positive association with area alone. And a weight of only 18% means that despite this model being supported, there is a low probability that this model is a significant predictor. We had 4 supported models out of the 26 run for presence of damage to peanut fields. This is without camera data. A positive adjacent forest association was present for all of them. The highest model weight was 16%, which indicates that we can't accurately predict which model is correct. The presence of damage to peanut fields with camera data added resulted in 6 supported models, with a positive association with the number of wild pigs detected on camera appearing in all of them. Low model weights again prevent us from ascribing a strong predictive power to any single model. The extent of peanut damage was a little more interesting. Without camera data, we had 5 supported models, all of individual variables, and with a maximum weight of 24%. When we added camera data, the only supported model became the number of wild pigs detected on camera. This model had the single highest weight of all of our tests at 60%. So a summary of our landscape attribute predictors. Our results largely match previous studies from Europe and Asia. The more preferred wild pig habitat adjacent to the surveyed fields, the more likely damage was to occur, and at a higher severity. Agricultural land in adjacent areas was negatively associated, along with the length of paved roads. Both of these associations make sense, as they provide little to no cover for pigs to move along and forage. Remote cameras can be an excellent addition to identify individual areas to be targeted for management. They have the benefit of being easy to use and are available at a consumer price point for small areas. Despite the number of cameras we placed, we didn't get enough pigs on camera at cornfields to determine the effect of the number of pigs on that damage. What I would consider the most significant management implication is the high seasonality of damage. If wild pig numbers can be disrupted at the beginning of the growing season before planting, our results suggest a high percentage of damage can be prevented. This likely means trapping efforts begin weeks to months before the first seeds go into the ground. A 2014 study by Tyrfjell in Europe indicated that wild pig behavior can be influenced by the presence of hunters, even if those hunters are not targeting wild pigs specifically. Simply by being in the woods and the noise from gunshots pushes them to retreat into better cover, often away from unprotected agricultural areas. Even a short window of interruption could be enough to let the plants get past their most vulnerable stage. We indicated that landscape features do affect the presence and severity of wild pig damage. This may seem entirely obvious. Of course, wild pig damage is higher near preferred pig habitat, but it also seemed obvious that wild pigs would actively target an almost unlimited source of high protein food in the turned and drying mature peanuts. But we discovered through this research that they don't, at least not in the fields we surveyed. We hope this research will assist managers in targeting efforts when and where they matter most. As the number and distribution of pigs continue to grow, management resources become stretched further. This necessitates a higher efficiency. And because wild pigs have one of the widest distributions on the planet, our findings may be able to be applied on an international scale. The second part of our research is applying data from UAS or drone flights over the surveyed fields to determine the ability to measure damage from above using both RGB and multispectral imaging sensors. Right now, damage surveys are incredibly time-consuming. If the walked transect method can be replaced with automated flights, then we will have the ability to survey far larger areas. The full details of this study can be found in the journal Crop Protection. I'd like to thank Dr. James Beasley, first and foremost, my graduate advisor, Drs. VerCauteren and Mike Menjak, my advisory committee, the University of Georgia's Warnell School of Forestry and Natural Resources, and the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory. I'd also like to thank the United States Department of Energy and Department of Agriculture and the Clemson Cooperative Extension. And special thanks to Steve Smith, Trip Lowe, and the South Carolina landowners who, without their permission and hospitality, this research would not have been possible. Thank you.